Welcome back to our second video examining what does the Bible say about love, sex, and marriage, specifically through the lens of Song of Songs. If you missed the introductory video, I suggest you find it on the playlist. And also, if English is not your preferred language, we're going to have this teaching series also available in Hindi and maybe some other languages in the future. I can't promise that, but maybe we will. So we're going to go into the text of Song of Songs now, starting with chapter 1. It is Hebrew love poetry. And so in this video, we're going to cover chapters 1, 2, and the first stanza of chapter 3, and then we'll continue on from there in a further video. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, there's 3 different voices that we hear in the poem. One is a young woman, and then there is her husband, who is the young man, and then there are the daughters of Jerusalem, who I think we can best understand as the friends of the wife. And they're kind of encouraging and cheering for her and happy for their marital bliss that they are experiencing. All right, so without further ado, we're going to start from chapter 1. Verse 1 says, "This is Solomon's Song of Songs, more wonderful than any other." And again, different translations interpret this text in different ways. I would understand it as, this is a song, the greatest song of all songs, written in Solomon's style. He was famous for having written many love songs and love poems, but this is one that actually kind of has a message that is critical of Solomon, as you will find when we get to the next video in chapter 3. This is the greatest song ever written, Song of Songs. That's what it's trying to express. So the first voice we have here is from the young woman. So starting from verse 2, the first half says, "Kiss me and kiss me again." So this is the bride expressing her desire to be kissed and taken into the bedroom. One thing that is interesting is that she is the initiator here. We often think of, the man is the one who wants to initiate romance and sexual activity. In this case, it is the wife who is initiating. And then it says, "Your love is sweeter than wine." And so, this means that, your love is better than wine, although both are intoxicating. That's the parallel there. And then in verse 2, "How pleasing is your fragrance. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you." So she's basically saying he smells nice. And others agree that he is quite the catch. All right. And then verse 4 says, "Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom." Now, again, some people say that, this shows us that it's about Solomon, but understand that this is metaphorical love poetry, and king is also a term for the groom. In fact, in Middle Eastern weddings, even today in some Middle Eastern cultures, the bride and groom are customarily referred to as the king and the queen on their wedding day. So this does not necessarily mean Solomon, and if we're being overly literal in this book, we're going to have problems. So we have to give a little bit of flexibility for the poetry to, have some double meaning and some metaphor and go with the big picture here. All right, and then in verse 5, now we have a different voice, and we know that from the change in the Hebrew grammar. These are the young women of Jerusalem, and they say, "How happy are we for you, O king? We praise your love even more than wine." Okay, so again, we should understand that the chorus of voices is kind of like the bride's group of friends talking. That's how we understand it. And then the wife says, switching back to her in the second half of verse 4, "How right they are to adore you." Okay? And then she continues in verse 5 and says, "I am dark but beautiful, O women of Jerusalem, dark as the tents of Kedar, dark as the curtains of Solomon's tents." All right? And so, she's basically saying she is a well-tanned country girl. She's not a city girl who's, never exposed to the sunlight, but she maybe works in the field and she's outdoors and she has a darker complexion, and that she is confident in who she is, right? I don't even know if in their society they had the same things that we see in India today, where they look down on darker skin and appreciate fair skin more. I won't go into a big talk on skin color right now, but I find it ironic that in the Western world, they go to tanning salons and they put on tanning oil, and white people want to be darker and dark people want to be lighter, and nobody is satisfied with how God made them. She is not ashamed of her dark skin, and nobody should be. All right. So she's saying she is beautiful, but not like the pale city girls. All right. And so then verse 6 says, "Don't stare at me because I am dark. The sun has darkened my skin. My brothers were angry with me. They forced me to care for their vineyards so that I couldn't care for myself, my own vineyard. Tell me, my love, where are you leading your flock today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? Why should the flock wander like a prostitute among your friends and their flock?" So basically, she's saying, I don't want to be wandering around looking for you. Tell me the exact location where you're going to be. She's planning a little romantic rendezvous later in the day. And then in verse 8, he answers, and so the voice changes. And in verse 8, he says, "If you don't know, oh, most beautiful woman, follow the trail of my flock and graze your young goats by the shepherd's tent." And so basically he playfully says, just follow the tracks of my flock and you'll be able to find me. Pretend that you're just taking your flocks out to graze and we will meet out in the fields. And he calls her the most beautiful among women. And so the imagery of sheep and goats and shepherds, it's part of the romance here, right? It is a pleasant scene away from the public of the city. The city means alienation for them, but the countryside is a place of love and romance and privacy. All right, and so now we're going to move on to verse 10. "You are as exciting, my darling, as a mare among Pharaoh's stallions." The groom is describing the beauty of his bride. He compared her to a mare of Pharaoh's stallions, the beauty of horses. Now, mares are not used in chariots, but stallions. That's the idea, is that a mare in heat, a mare is a female horse, right? A mare in heat being brought in during a battle to drive the wild stallions crazy. This was a battle strategy, actually, right? If you're fighting an army and they have a bunch of chariots and the horses are trained in battle, but when the stallions are coming at you, if you release a female horse who's in heat, the horses will go crazy. They won't obey their charioteer, but they will chase after the female horse instead, and even fight with each other to get to the horse. And so this is an ancient war strategy, and she's talking about, and so he's talking about basically, you make me crazy. I'm not going to do my work properly because I'm so distracted by your attractiveness. Is kind of what he's saying. You are a total distraction. Verse 10, "How lovely are your cheeks, your earrings set them afire. How lovely is your neck, enhanced by strong jewels. We will make for you earrings of gold and beads of silver." So she is wearing jewels to enhance her beauty. Her friends in verse 11, they add to her jewels. Interesting, in the NLT, it doesn't mention the friends interjecting there. That's an interpretive difference how they translated it. In the 21st century, this means that they have checked out the bridal registry and they've gotten her some great gifts, right? We will get you more gold and beads of silver. All right, and then in verse 12, now it's back to the young woman talking, and she says, "The king is lying on his couch, enchanted by the fragrance of my perfume." All right, so they are lying down, and then he says, "My lover is like a sachet of myrrh lying between my breasts." So his head is lying on between her breasts, and he is like a bouquet of sweet henna blossoms in a vineyard of En-gedi. They tell each other that they are beautiful, right? So that's what she said about him. And then he says to her in verse 15, "How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful. Your eyes are like doves." And then she responds back to him in verse 16, "You are so handsome, my love, pleasing beyond words. The soft grass is our bed. All right, so they are outside. They're not literally in a house, nor is he literally a king, but they are in the countryside in the process of making love. And then verse 17, fragrant cedar branches are the beams of our house, and the pleasant smelling firs are the rafters. All right, so this scene is full of wonderful smells. It's a beautiful environment, and it all the smells and colors and sights stirs up their strong feelings for each other. Now in chapter 2, starting with verse 1, it's again the young woman talking, the wife, and she says, I am the spring crocus blooming on Sharon Plain, the lily of the valley. All right, so she's saying, I'm just a common wildflower. But then he answers in verse 2, like a lily among thistles is my darling among women. So he's saying, no, you are unique. You're not just a common flower, but you are something special among the less desirable plant life. Okay, in verse 3, she's talking, and she describes an apple tree among the plane trees of the forest. Okay, she says, like the finest apple tree in an orchard is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. This passage is about sexual intimacy. Some have translated verse 4 as, he brought me to his house with wine, and his intention to me was to make love. The way that it reads here is, he escorted me to the banquet hall, and it was obvious how much he loves me. All right? And then in verse 5, he says, she says, strengthen me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, for I am weak with love. All right, and the passage, as I said, is about sexual intimacy. All right, and then verse 6, okay, it says that his left arm was under my head and his right arm embraces me. And depending how you translate it in Hebrew, it could be understood more than embrace. It could be like fondles me, okay? I think that's a stronger translation. Verse 7, it says, promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the wild deer, not to awaken love before the time is right. So verse 7 is the first time we see a warning passage appear, and the bride is speaking to her single friends, and she makes a promise. This is a serious teaching. Do not arouse love. Do not fall in love. Do not get caught in the throes of passion and make mistakes that you will later regret until it's the right time and you're with the right person with the right covenant in place. Do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. And now on to chapter 2, verse 8. I hear my lover coming. He is leaping over the mountains, bounding over the hills. My lover is like a swift gazelle or a young stag. Look, he is there behind a wall, looking through a window, peering into the room. My lover said to me, rise up, my darling, come away with me, my fair one. And you know, when it says fair, it means beautiful. It does not mean light-skinned, okay? That is a different understanding of the word fair, and not the one that's found in the Bible, okay? She is dark and she is beautiful, as it says very clearly in the earlier chapters. Look, the winter is past. The rains are over and gone, all right? So the winter are past, and spring is the season for romantic love. And then in verse 12, she says, the flowers are springing up. The season of singing birds has come. The cooing of the turtle doves fills the air. In verse 13, the fig trees are forming young fruit, and the fragrant grapevines are blossoming. Rise up, my darling. Come away with me, my fair one. Again, that's what she says to him. He is beautiful to her. And then in verse 14, now it's the young man talking. He says, my dove is hiding behind the rocks, behind an outcrop on the cliff. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. For your voice is pleasant and your face is lovely. So he's looking for her. And then there is the young women of Jerusalem. The friends are speaking for verse 15. And they say, catch all the foxes, all those little foxes, before they ruin the vineyard of love. For the grapevines are blossoming. And then in verse 16 and 17, she talks about the exclusive nature of their relationship. My lover is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies. Before the dawn breezes blow, and the night shadows flee. Return to me, my love, like a gazelle or like a young stag in the rugged mountains. So when she says, he is mine and I am his, it's talking about, even though he checked out all the women and he decided on me. He is mine, I am his. We are only for each other exclusively. Again, not something you could say about Solomon, right? And then in verse 17, it talks about how they are going to be together for the night. The first stanza, the first 5 verses of chapter 3, and then that'll be it for this video. So, chapter 3, verse 1, it says, one night as I lay in bed, I yearned for my lover. This is the young woman talking. So she wants him with her at night. So I said to myself, I will get up and I will roam the city, searching in all its streets and squares. I will search for the one I love. So I searched for him everywhere, but I did not find him. Right? So she wakes up, he's not in bed. And so then in verse 3, it says, the watchmen stopped me as they made their rounds. And I asked them, have you seen the one I love? And then scarcely had I left them when I found my love. I caught and I held him tightly. Then I brought him into my mother's house, into my mother's bed, where I had been conceived. So when she finds him, she holds him and she brings him into a safe place, into her mother's house. Then verse 5 is another one of the warnings. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and by the wild deer, do not awaken love before its time. Okay? So the truth we can draw from this is that you want to be with your spouse. If you wake up in the middle of the night and they're not there, then you'll go search for them and you'll grab them and you'll bring them back home because you want to be with them. So in chapter 3, the rest of it, we're going to see the contrast with Solomon's marriage number 60. And I'll see you in the next video.